Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lane Russell, and you're watching Midnight. I'd like to tell you that these ideas expressed herein are my own, not the views of YouTube, Dailymotion, or anybody else on the internet. Just me. It's been a while since we last saw each other, and I'd like to apologize for the long delay. I wish I could tell you that I've been busy with some sort of grand effort, but in reality, nothing has sufficiently annoyed me until recently to motivate me to record another video. If you've been paying attention, you'll know that the government shut down a couple of months ago. Of course, they really did nothing of the kind. The shutdown is a sort of euphemism for what happens when Congress fails to agree on what to fund before the fiscal year runs out. Nevertheless, Congress is still in session. Social Security and Medicare were still being paid, and the military was still vigilantly patrolling the world. The only things that have really been shut down were all the non-essential services into which the federal government have weaseled their way. So, how did the government shut down? What led us to that disaster? Well, you may recall a few years ago, the government fraudulently ran through Congress and the Supreme Court the inaccurately and euphemistically titled Affordable Care and Patient Protection Act. Normally a bill, no matter how ill-conceived, goes through days of dull, rigorous, and stultifying debate before voting. Nancy Pelosi, former Speaker of the House, famously claimed that we have to pass the bill to find out what's in it. A claim patently absurd to anyone even remotely familiar with parliamentary procedure. The bill passed without a single Republican vote. When the constitutionality of the bill was challenged, Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts famously and erroneously declared the bill to be constitutional if the fines for non-participation were determined to be a tax. The constitutionality of this bill was determined on the basis of calling the Obamacare tax a tax, which President Obama subsequently refused to do. Not only this, he claimed that the bill would save households $2,500 a year when it actually cost the average household $7,500 more a year. Claimed that you may keep your plan and your doctor when the bill states that you will not. In short, the president has lied about every facet of this bill without exception. In addition, once Congress found out what was actually in the bill, they exempted themselves from it. Also exempted the president, various corporations and unions, and whoever the president feels particularly buddy-buddy with. House Republicans have not been entirely idle. An effort led by Senator Ted Cruz has found support with Tea Party-affiliated candidates to defund this poisonous legislation. They've received opposition with hateful and inaccurate rhetoric from expected sources like Nancy Pelosi and Senator Harry Reid, who, in the absence of actually having some insightful and legitimate opposition, settle for childish name-calling. But they've also been assaulted by Republican leadership in the House and Senate from the likes of Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, and House Speaker John Boehner. The very people who should be standing shoulder to shoulder with Cruz and genuine Republicans, battling zealously against this legislative cluster of fornication, seem interested only in engaging in protracted makeout sessions with the gluteus maximi, which they then proclaim to be French vanilla ice cream, of the Democratic Party leadership. Boehner, McConnell, and others seem to be miffed that this upstart junior senator from Texas has the nerve to make them all look bad by actually doing his job and representing the people of Texas who want to see Obamacare repealed. Indeed, when questioned, Graham and McConnell seemed very upset that they are expected to do more than look pretty and hang out at the Capitol building and act like it's not their job to represent the 60% of Americans who believe that Congress overstepped its constitutional authority when they arrogated to themselves the power to require an American citizen to buy a product they didn't want, a product that would be bad for them and for the country. Ted Cruz is doing something they don't seem to have the backbone to do, actually listening to the people who elected him and working himself to the bone to do what these people want. House Republican plan was simple: fund the government. Give it all the money it wants. Fund everything except Obamacare. They sent in a resolution to fund the government, offering not one penny for the president's signature legislation. The Senate predictably rejected it. The Democrats, always first to demand compromise, would not compromise with the Republicans. All the while, they've been bad-mouthing House Republicans with the silliest of accusations and blaming them for the shutdown. Here's my problem with that. The shutdown is a Democratic action. The Senate refused to fund the government. They had the bill in their hands and they refused to pass it. President Obama has proclaimed that he will sign no bill that defunds or reduces Obamacare. Harry Reid and the president have both declared that they will not negotiate with the Republicans. Think about that. The president, who has no qualms about negotiating with terrorists, installs Islamic terrorist dictators in the Middle East, and sends Mexican drug cartels fully automatic weapons, absolutely refuses to discuss an issue of great importance with members of his own government. Harry Reid has called the Republicans anarchists. Pelosi has called them arsonists and compared them to suicide bombers. But who are the real domestic terrorists here? Who has a clear majority in the Senate but won't consider any common ground with the minority? Who feels the need to demonize people who feel differently? Senate Democrats. They had the bills, all they had to do was vote for them. The so-called shutdown would never have occurred. They could then have moved on to finding another avenue of deceit with which to bamboozle the American people into accepting Obamacare, as when one slips a roofie into a pretty girl's drink. But they didn't. Like spoiled and ill-behaved kindergartners, they threw a fit when White House Republicans did what they were elected to do. And with all due respect to his office, the most childish, most spoiled brat of all sits sulking at his address at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, plotting his petty vengeance on the 4% of Americans who actually work in government jobs that will be furloughed, because that's the only segment of the population he can effectively bully. Everyone else, he has to hope, will be easily intimidated by this latest phony emergency he and his Senate toadies have hastily and shoddily contrived. Like the sequester that Obama insists be passed and that he sign into law, his allies have tried to portray this as an end-of-the-world scenario, when it is a minor annoyance at worst. So far, only a handful of people have been affected by the shutdown. For the rest, life goes on. But make no mistake, the Democrats could have avoided this. House Republicans did what they were supposed to do. Any guilt, responsibility, or blame rests solely on the shoulders of Harry Reid and his ilk. Failed and uninspired so-called leadership, whose blood must surely be, in the immortal words of T. Herman Zweibel, no more than a thin pinkish drool in the veins of its so-called manhood. Congress and the court were given in the Constitution the power to resist executive tyranny. Chief Justice John Roberts lay down on the job and took a dive. His ruling is wrong, and the court had been wrong before. Just ask Dred Scott. Congress still has a few real men and women who have chosen to remain accountable to their electorate. Call your congressman and senator, and alternately encourage or scold them as necessary. If you can reach legislators of other districts, let them know what you think and how you feel. Shame the Democrats, if that's even possible, into owning the shutdown that they contrived. Let them know you want Obamacare defunded and repealed as soon as possible, and never let anyone forget that the Democrats caused this. Tell your true Republican legislators to toe the line and not give up. Tell the RINO Republican leadership, Boehner, McConnell, McCain, and Graham, get their heads out of their large intestines. Either grow some testicles and start fighting the Democrats, or join the Democratic Party. My name is Lane Russell, and you've been watching Midnight.